In 1914, Russia entered the World War. After 3 years, the country was exhausted. Thousands of deaths, mainly of peasants, who were the basis of the Tsarist army. Mobilizing peasants to the front caused a huge drop in agricultural production, inaugurating a period of hunger and misery. The soldiers had no boots, no socks, no ammunition, and spent months lying in the frozen mud of the trenches. After each defeat of the Russian army, the Tsarist government established a new, unattainable military goal that fomented hatred and indignation amongst the soldiers. Strikes and workers' demonstrations began to burst open in the cities for bread and peace. On February the 23rd, in Petrograd, a massive march of women demanding food becomes the trigger of the February Revolution. The general strike breaks out among the working class. The revolutionary agitation for the overthrow of the Tsar dominates the streets for 5 days. The troops sent to suppress the uprising join the protesters. The government loses control. The liberal bourgeoisie also desired his fall. Finally, the Tsar abdicated in favour of his brother, who never sat on the throne. A provisional government headed by Prince Lvov is formed. All its members were representatives of the bourgeoisie, except Kerensky, member of the Revolutionary Socialists. The strong man of the new government was Milyukov, head of the main bourgeois party. At the same time, the All-Russian Executive Committee of the Soviets of Workers and Soldiers Deputies is formed. Meetings in the factories and regiments elect delegates for Soviets, which elected their representatives to the superior assemblies and so on. It was a pyramidal representative system, where each delegate could have their mandate revoked at any time on demand of the factory or the lower assembly that had elected the delegate. The workers and soldiers began to recognize their own Soviets as the only true authority in the country. A dual power was installed in Russia. Although the protagonists of the revolution were workers and soldiers, the historical project of the Russian bourgeoisie of establishing a liberal government seemed to have succeeded. But the dual power of the Soviets created a huge problem for them. The Mensheviks and social revolutionaries, the Peasant Party, were at the head of the Soviets. They had the point of view that the working class should be the left wing of the bourgeois revolution, and therefore supported the new bourgeois government that emerged from the ruins of Tsarism. Even so, the Soviets were a problem for the ruling classes. Their leaders were forced to yield to the demands of the democratic revolution. The most important of them was to end the war. As peace was not signed, popular discontent grew. On April the 18th, big demonstrations occur in all cities demanding peace without annexations. On April the 20th, Milyukov sends a telegram to the Allies assuring them that Russia would stay in the war. That causes 2 days of violent anti-government demonstrations, which the soldiers refused to suppress. Milyukov is forced to resign, and to regain its authority, the provisional government brings in Mensheviks and the SRs. Thus, a coalition government, the first Popular Front government of history, is formed. But this measure does not end with the dual power of the Soviets. Military failures occur, and the workers and popular discontent continues to grow. Meanwhile, on April the 3rd, a train that had gone through Germany reaches the Finland station in Petrograd. Lenin, the leader of the Bolshevik party in exile, arrives in Russia. Until his arrival, all political forces, including the Bolsheviks, supported the provisional government. Lenin's arrival causes an abrupt change in the policy of the Bolshevik party. Instead of praising the provisional government, as expected by all, Lenin exposed the new government as a government of capitalists, the enemy of urban workers and peasants. He said the fall of the Tsarist regime was just the beginning of the Russian Socialist Revolution, and that it was necessary to bring this revolution to the end as quickly as possible, delivering all power in the hands of the Soviets of Workers' and Soldiers' Deputies, constituting a truly revolutionary government to initiate the building of a socialist society. In May, Trotsky returns from exile and joins the Bolshevik Party in August. For him, Kerensky was a tool in the hands of the capitalists and landlords. Therefore, he advocated an immediate end to the war and confiscation of the land. Russia would finally belong to the workers and peasants, and therefore all power should pass to the Soviets. If in the cities the tempers never cooled down completely, in the Russian countryside the situation was even tenser. Without waiting for the promised Constituent Assembly, the poor peasants began to expel the big landowners from their lands and to divide them into lots. They did that against the orientation of the SRs, who wanted to avoid independent action of the rural poor and defended the maintenance of the status quo in the countryside until the Constituent Assembly met, when a peaceful agrarian reform should be made. This situation, combined with the continuation of war and hunger in the cities, led to a new wave of demonstrations, this time under the leadership of the Bolshevik Party. In early July, tensions rose further after a huge column of armed workers and sailors, supporters of the Bolsheviks, marched to the headquarters of the Executive Committee of the Soviets to demand that it take power. The Bolsheviks did not agree with the demonstration because they considered it premature. However, they decided to take the head to keep things under control. But on July the 4th, a large demonstration was surrounded by loyalist troops and attacked by snipers located on the roofs of buildings. There were dozens of deaths and hundreds of wounded. Taking advantage of the negative impact of the demonstration, the provisional government began an intense campaign against the Bolsheviks. Party print shops were closed, their newspapers banned, and its leaders imprisoned. Lenin had his imprisonment decreed and was forced into hiding in Finland, where he remained until the October Revolution. Trotsky was arrested. On July the 21st, Kerensky becomes Prime Minister and appointed the General Lev Kornilov as Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Army. The new commander extended the death penalty to the rear of the army, put the railways under a state of siege, and applied other harsh measures. Kerensky agreed with them. But after another failure at the front and the hanging of Bolshevik soldiers, Kerensky was forced to dismiss Kornilov. The commander did not accept the dismissal and attempted to overthrow the Prime Minister. Under the guidance of Trotsky, the Bolsheviks organized the working class, without giving any political support to the provisional government, to confront the counter-revolutionary coup of Kornilov. The victory over Kornilov left Kerensky in an even more delicate situation. It resulted in significantly increased distrust amongst Russians towards the provisional government. Fluttering in the air, the government owed its survival only to the Mensheviks and the SRs. The Bolsheviks won a majority in the Soviets of Petrograd and Moscow. Petrograd becomes ungovernable. The government tries to keep control of the capital and orders the deployment of the troops that defended Petrograd to the front. To prevent the movement of troops, the Soviet of Petrograd formed the Revolutionary Military Committee under the direction of Trotsky. The order of the provisional government to transfer troops from Petrograd, leaving the capital unprotected, and the proximity of the Second Congress of Soviets of all Russia were the perfect pretext for armed insurrection. On 25th of October, revolutionary troops began occupying the city and public buildings. Kerensky left the capital in a US embassy car. During the Congress of Soviets at 10 o'clock, October the 25th occurred. At last, the assault on the Winter Palace. The insurrection had triumphed. The Military Revolutionary Committee delivers power to the Congress of Soviets, which elects the revolutionary government headed by Lenin. The left social revolutionaries are the only political force that supports the new government, although not integrating into it. So the revolutionary government was only composed by Bolsheviks. After the victory of the insurrection, Russia leaves the war. All countries concerned were notified of this decision. The soldiers at the front were informed that they should immediately halt fighting and fraternize with the opponents, while on the same day the population received food, and the decree abolishing the private property of land was approved, without compensation to the former owners. The reduction of salaries of senior officials to the level of the wage of a skilled worker, along with the total equality of rights between men and women before the law, was among the first measures of the revolutionary government. On March 3rd, 1918, the Brest-Litovsk peace treaty is signed. The Russian Revolution inaugurated a new era in history and showed the whole world that it is possible that the working class can take power and initiate the construction of socialism worldwide.